All right. Have you ever looked at an exam question and just your brain freezes? You feel like it's written in a totally different language. Well, today we're going to tackle one of those questions from the NPPE. We're going to deconstruct it piece by piece to get to a legal principle that's honestly not just for the exam. This is something you'll carry with you for your entire engineering career in Canada. We're talking about the discoverability principle. Okay, let's dive right in. Take a look at the scenario here. It sounds pretty straightforward, but trust me, it's tricky. You've got a consultant who misses a design defect. Years go by, way past the standard deadline to sue. But then, bam, the hidden defect is finally discovered. So what now? What happens next? This is a classic engineering law question. It's designed specifically to see if you understand how these legal deadlines work, especially when things, don't show up right away. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we have to decode all that legal jargon that's packed into the question itself. Then, we're going to walk through each of the wrong answers, and I'll show you the conceptual traps that are set for you. And finally, we'll get to the right answer and really unpack the core principle that you absolutely 100% need to know for the NPPE. Okay, so to really crack this question, we've got to learn to speak a little bit of lawyer. Let's start by defining two super important phrases that are right there in the problem: basic limitation period and ultimate limitation period. Seriously, getting these two straight is half the battle won right there. So what's the basic limitation period? Think of it like a standard countdown clock, maybe 2 years long. The second something goes wrong, like a defect occurs, this clock is supposed to start ticking. It's the first main window of opportunity for someone to file a lawsuit. And then we have the ultimate limitation period. What's that? Well, think of this one as the final absolute no exceptions deadline. It's way longer, usually something like 15 years, and it exists to give professionals like you some finality, some closure. After the state passes, that's it. No more lawsuits can be filed. It's the absolute end of the line. And this, by the way, is exactly why your project documentation from 10, 15 years ago can suddenly become incredibly important. And right here, this is the key difference that unlocks the entire question. The basic period, it's kind of flexible. It can actually be paused or postponed. But the ultimate period, no way. That's a hard stop. It cannot be changed. This is the single most important concept here. Got it? One clock can be stopped, but the other one just keeps on ticking no matter what. All right, now for the really fun part. Let's dig into the answer choices, because on the NPPE, it's not enough to just spot the right answer. You've got to know with confidence exactly why the other ones are wrong. So let's go through and expose the traps one by one. First up is option A, the doctrine of continuous breach. Ooh, that sounds pretty fancy and legal, right? And it is a real legal concept, which makes it a perfect trap for someone who's not quite sure. So why doesn't it work here? Well, the idea of a continuous breach is for problems that keep happening over and over again. Think about a factory that's illegally dumping waste into a river every single day. That's a continuous breach. But our scenario, it's about a single mistake that happened in the past. The consultant failed to spot a defect once. It's not an ongoing problem, so this doctrine just doesn't fit. Okay, let's skip down to option C, the contractual warranty period. Now, this is another fantastic trap because as engineers, we live and breathe contracts and warranties, right? It feels familiar. But here's the critical distinction you have to make. A warranty, that's a private deal, right? It's part of a contract between you and the client. A limitation period, on the other hand, is a public law that applies to everybody. So yeah, your project's 1-year warranty might be long gone, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook for a hidden defect that pops up years later. They are two completely separate things. Don't mix them up.
And that brings us to our last wrong answer. Option D, the regulatory limitation period. Again, this sounds pretty convincing. I mean, it mentions licensed professionals, and our question is all about a professional consultant. It seems to fit.
But it's a trap. This is wrong because it confuses two totally different legal worlds. Regulatory periods, that's about your professional association, PO, APGA, EGBC, investigating you for professional misconduct. A civil claim, that's when a client takes you to court to sue you for money, for damages. They are separate streams with completely different rules and completely different deadlines. Okay, so we've knocked out all the wrong answers. What's left has to be the right one. But before I just give you the answer, let's circle back to the core dilemma of this whole situation. What's the real problem we're trying to solve here? So here's the fundamental question, right? How does the law strike a balance? On one hand, professionals need to have some finality, some end point to their liability. On the other hand, a client who just discovered a huge, hidden problem deserves a chance at justice. So how do you solve that? What's the fair solution? And the answer is B, the discoverability principle. It's a really elegant solution, actually. This rule says that the countdown clock, that basic limitation period, it doesn't even start until the day the defect was actually discovered or, importantly, the day it reasonably could have been discovered.
So here's exactly how it plays out. You've got this hidden defect. The legal term is a latent defect. And that 2-year clock, it's just sitting there, paused. It hasn't started. The clock only starts ticking on the exact day the client finds the problem. Or, and this is key, on the day a reasonable person should have found it. It's all about what's fair.
So let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? What's the key takeaway for you? How does this apply not just to passing the exam, but to your actual day-to-day life as a professional engineer? Because believe me, this isn't just some abstract legal theory. I think this quote just nails it perfectly. The whole idea is built on simple fairness and common sense. It's saying, look, you can't expect someone to sue for a wrong they don't even know about. You can't start a countdown for a race that nobody knows has begun. And that right there is the simple, powerful logic behind the discoverability principle. And here it is, your number one hot tip for the NPPE exam. If you're in that exam and you read a question that talks about a hidden flaw, a problem that's only found years down the road, or if you see the magic words latent defect, a little light bulb should go off in your head. Your brain should immediately scream, discoverability principle, because that is almost guaranteed to be what the question is testing you on. Okay, to make sure all of this really sticks, let's do a super quick review of the key terminology from this question. Think of this as your personal digital study card for exam day. All right, let's lock this vocabulary in. First up, limitation period. In Farsi, you'll hear this as dogre I murur zaman. It's simply the legal deadline to file a lawsuit. Next, the star of our show today, the discoverability principle. In Farsi, that's asle qabiliyat kashf. This is that crucial rule that the limitation clock only starts when the problem is found. Then we have latent defect, or aib pinhan in Farsi, which is just a fancy way of saying a hidden flaw. And finally, time barred, which is mashmule murur zaman. This means the deadline has passed, you're out of time, and the claim is legally dead in the water. So I'm going to leave you with one final question, something to take back and really think about in your own professional practice. Now that you know that a problem with your design, a decision you made, could be discovered 5, 10, even 15 years from now, how does that change the way you think about documenting your work and keeping those long-term records? Really, it's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this breakdown.